I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P and you're watching the Cartoon Palooza. Keeping up with this month's theme of Spider-Man, let's go ahead and talk about that bygone era, the early 2000s. Y2K was a bluff, 90 kids were now considered old enough to be nostalgic, and Spider-Man's now a part of Sony. The rights to the character, and the studios who have traded him, have always led to a bumpy ride, even today, mostly in dealing with movies, shows, and media using the character. As a result of Marvel selling the film and TV rights to the webhead due to potentially going into bankruptcy, Sony had plans on making a feature film which resulted in 2002's Spider-Man, and it was awesome! Regardless of my opinion on the film, which is that it's amazing, and it's cool, spectacular, look at him swing that web, pew, pew, pew! Sorry. The movie broke many records at the box office. This resulted in Sony wanting to make an animated series that would tie into the films, rather than the original plans to make a series based on the Ultimate Comics. Along with writer Brian Michael Bendis, we got our first new series since the first 90s Spider-Man, and, well, yeah, just play it. Where do we begin? So where do we start? Let's start with the obvious. This show is completely animated in CG and it looks terrible. On one hand, I think it could have worked in a number of ways, mostly when it focused less on the humans and mostly on the effects and props, which can range from decent to PlayStation 2 levels of bad. But on the other hand, we got humans. Their designs are so stiff and hard to rig, it makes you wonder why they didn't just opt for flash animation. If it's about budget, like I said before, flash animation would have been a better option. But hey, the show was kind enough to identify it as its own thing by calling this the new animated Spider-Man rather than Spider-Man the Animated Series, to avoid confusion with the last show. Much like that show, it focuses on Peter going to college at Empire State University, rather than having him in high school. And I'm gonna give some credit to this over the previous series, but at least the animators designed him to look more like an older teenager going into his 20s rather than a man pushing 30. Give him the voice of Barney Stinson and you're good to go.
You have a thing for 30mm carbine tracers. Highly illegal and sold right here. Oh, I forgot. You're not a paying customer, are you?
Yeah, I ain't kidding. That's Neil Patrick Harris playing Spider-Man. Given that he played another superhero, it's a pretty good choice. I wish I could say the same for his other cast members. Mary Jane's design is so weird it looks like she came from the same planet as the Coneheads. I got no idea what they were going for with Harry, who not only looks nothing like his live-action counterpart despite trying to be a tie-in to the movies, but what's up with the voice?
Oh, would you look at the time? I better get to class.
You don't have another class today.
Well, then I'll find one.
The guy's supposed to be Harry Osborn, not Malibu Ken. But okay, it's Spider-Man. At least we're gonna get to see other characters from the comics, right? Well, kind of. You got villains like Electro, Kingpin, Kraven, and the Lizard, and I think that's about it, honestly. Oh yeah, Silver Sable. Silver Sable showed up once. That's something. Most episodes focus on other characters created by the show, and you can't help but wonder why. The studio owns Spider-Man characters. Why create characters when you can literally have a continuous backlog of characters that don't pertain to other Marvel properties? The show doesn't even include familiar faces we've seen in Peter's workplace at Daily Bugle, like Betty Brant, or other characters like Eddie Brock. Instead, they create alternate versions that are supposed to reflect qualities to these characters, but it don't make sense when you don't necessarily have to create new characters and start from scratch. I don't know, man. Nothing about the show reflects the look and feel of Spider-Man outside of the characters they call themselves Spider-Man. Most of the time we see Peter fight crime and night, which focuses on heavier shadows and contrast. Since the show relies on cel shading, which gives the impression that it's a 2D aesthetic on top of 3D models, it actually contradicts the artificial lighting of the characters. The technology, it wasn't ready for this type of animation, but with a different style that was more suited for its strengths, it could have worked. Even though there are dark aspects to Spider-Man, most adaptations that get it right understand the look and feel of action, lore, and fun. I watched this show and it leaves such a dour impression on my mind. The big irony to this is that this is supposed to connect to the Sam Raimi films, which outside of a few things like Harry hating Spider-Man for killing his father, they're completely different. We can start with basic aesthetics like the music. Listen to the Danny Elfman soundtrack in the movie and compare it to the show soundtrack. What about Raimi's film used early 90s techno club music? With this kind of music, I keep thinking the opening is going to lead into the lineup of the first Tekken game. Even though I compared it to the animation quality of the PlayStation 2, now I'm backtracking, I'm saying PlayStation 1. I gotta work on my comparisons, but I hope you get my point. The show tries so hard to appeal to teenagers that it's almost disgusting how much they pander to their audience. There are plenty of things about Spider-Man that seem corny at first, but the passion and commitment to good characters and story make you accept it for sillier moments. The show is afraid to embrace the silliness that, once you get to it, is what works about the character. Even acknowledging it won't hurt. Sure, you can let the characters get away with saying words like ass, but without thinking if it's something appropriate versus something you know you can get away with, it don't sound right. I think the show puts too much focus away from Peter Parker's personal problems and dealing with everybody else like Harry and his villains. It's taken away from the importance of Peter's struggle. It's there, but it seems to take the standard approach mediocre action shows have, in that making the fight and villains more important than the heroes don't make us care for the heroes. Spider-Man's always unique in that both the heroes and the villains reflect the same typical problems that made him relatable. Norman Osborn may have been a hothead businessman, but he was a single father whose work has literally consumed him and unintentionally reflected upon his son. We see that with Harry when, oh, right, they killed off the Green Goblin to have their excuse to say it's connected to the movies. So we don't even know what Norman's relationship was like, or why Harry's as angry as he is. So much of that time was one dedicated to Mary Jane's cone head and Peter Parker's dead-eyed stare. God, get him away from me. Long story short, this show is a show that had an idea of where it wanted to go. However, it felt misguided despite having good talent work on it like Brian Michael Bendis. But then again, he was a story consultant on Ultimate Spider-Man with Drake Bell, so hey, I don't know. And even as its own thing that doesn't have to be faithful to the comics, it don't manage to do well on its own. You got a Japanese version with a robot, and I'd rather watch that and feel more entertained than this throwaway from an era of Frosted Chips and Chad Kroger. This is easily a forget about it. So comment below and let me know what you think. What MTV animated series did you like? And surprisingly, there's a lot of good animation quality that aired on the network. So comment below and let me know what you think. I'm Joey Tedesco, and stick around next week as we continue this theme on the Cartoon Palooza.